the other team seemed to work better. But, yeah, for the final stage, Micah took it and took off because they found the challenge, and it was to beat the pink van team, the ones who were in the pink van.
Okay,
So
okay.
he caught him and overtook him, but they didn't know when he was coming. It's a right-hand turn coming in. No. Yeah, it's over at some of the mountain passes. They only warn.
Okay, Board Member Sharkey, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Right now, I can hear you.
Well, you do how you want to, whatever makes it easier for you.
Patrick Schaefer.
Here, I'm having a hard time listening to the audio.
Robert Pinion,
Present.
Scott Bracken,
Yes.
Scott Little,
Yes.
Tessa Spitzer,
Here.
Tom Styron. Anna Barbieri.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, thank you for that. We're gonna move through our agenda. Just as a kind of housekeeping note, if you could all do me a favor, just for our convenience of the recording, so that if anybody wants to listen to it, they understand who's talking. Especially if you're making a motion or providing a second, can you please state your name so that it's easily recorded for our clerk and for anybody listening. We're gonna move to item number 1.1. Well, item number 1, the consent items. 1.1 is August 22nd, 2022 board meeting minutes. Is there any questions or corrections on those minutes from anyone?
Yes, Scott Little, there's just a couple of corrections. I abstained from voting on the minutes from the prior meeting because I wasn't at that meeting. But on the other votes, I voted, and I voted with the rest of the body. So
Great,
that
thank you
needs to
very
be corrected.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for noting that. Okay, with that correction, can I get a motion for approval of the consent item?
Dan Gibbons from Holiday, I move we approve the board minutes from August 22nd, 2022.
I'll second that. Scott Little from White City.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay, perfect. Item number 2 is meeting open for public comment. We're hoping that we can have some public, if they'd like to, make some comments. Their comments are limited to 3 minutes. I don't see anyone here in the audience. Katerina, has anyone submitted anything to you? Okay, and it doesn't appear that there's anyone online that's wanting to make any public comments. So we will close that portion of our meeting. Move on to item number 3, business items. 3.1 is a request for 2 additional full-time equivalent employees to be hired in 2022 for safety, emergency, and data specialist and program support. Pam.
That was a mouthful. We are coming before you as staff to request 2 additional FTEs. These particular positions, we have couched this in the past as needing to expand our resources with administration, mainly focusing on operational support. I think you all have this in front of you. Page 34. There we go. Thank you so much, Renee. Okay, so I'm just going to kick it off, and then I'll turn some time over. Ashley is our HR manager, and she'll help with the safety and emergency preparedness, and then Paul will help with the financial analysis that he conducted for each of these 2 positions. Just to give you an introduction, we currently have 94 FTEs. 10 of those positions are administrative, and you can read through there. My position and Paul's position were in place before we separated from Salt Lake County in 2013. We added the controller treasurer to help with the finance management because we took that all in-house. The HR manager also that position was established to help with the new organization because we took all human resource management, personnel management in-house as well. The executive assistant was existing as well. The accounting technician for payroll was there, but it became more of a full-time position. It was more part-time sharing with some of the accounts receivable. So that transitioned into a full-time, specifically for payroll, because we do that all in-house. Just to note that we took all financial management in-house. We also were tasked with taking on the huge administrative function of billing. And so we added the customer accounts coordinator in 2014 to specifically focus on our customer accounts, all 86,000 of them that we bill quarterly. We went with a quarterly billing because we wanted to try to keep costs low for our residents. For printing and mailing, that, of course, that goes up if we're doing it monthly. In doing so, I wanted to state that we had 3 months of cash or accounts receivable money coming in that moved into accounts receivable. So we saw a decrease in our fund balance or our cash balance, go from 14 million to 10 when we went to that quarterly billing. So when we get into those cash projections, if you take a note of that, that's what that is. That went into accounts receivable. It doesn't really ever hit, which is interesting. In 2021, just last year, we added the administrative management position, and that's Renee that joined our team, thankfully. She is helping with internal services, contracts procurement, private road accounts, a lot of project management. Our new website was one of the big projects she took on. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do walk-that-trunk-way.org. And then we also added the HR payroll specialist last year to help with internal controls as well as payroll processing, to have some backup there, so that our payroll technician can actually have some vacation time or if she's out for some other reasons. So, getting into, we'll start off with the Safety and Emergency Preparedness Coordinator job summary. I just want to kick it off to say that really, in analyzing this, it looks as though the safety coordinator position itself could be full-time, but we also need assistance with emergency preparedness. Right now, our institutional knowledge of how to be prepared for emergency and respond is vested in me, and I need to pass that on. There is some that's with David Ickar, our operations manager, but we really need somebody within our organization to have that knowledge, to continue on with the training, getting us all certified with FEMA, the ICS, et cetera. So that will be a big part of their role. I'll still have some, involvement in that, because I need to make sure that they understand how to make that happen. The safety, this position will fall under Ashley, HR manager, and, Ashley, I don't know if you want to get into a little bit more of this position, I'd appreciate it, go for it.
Absolutely. So kind of like what Pam said, we got together and reviewed the current, job duties and responsibilities for this position. And after much review, we, discovered that there's definitely a need for a full-time, role for this position. So some of the benefits, for adding a full-time would just be to make sure that we stay compliant, with all those laws and regulations with the FMCSA, DOT, FEMA, or any of those industry practices. It also allows, more time allocated to, the training, our safety training materials, along with making sure that our employees stay current in their certification. And that, will definitely help prevent any workplace injuries or, illnesses and accidents. The full-time hours will also, for this position, will also, be available at any time to, report to any accident or injuries that occur. I think that was an issue with, having a part-time person in this position was, if they leave at 1 or 2 in the afternoon and the accident happens, after that, they're not able to report, and therefore our operations team has to do what they're doing, stop and go out and review that accident. So that'll help, prevent any of those future losses. So, and then also, right now, David Ickar, our operations, is taking on a lot of the responsibilities. So we kind of did a little bit of a breakdown on how much time he's spending. So currently, 30 hours per month, roughly, our midpoint, 50-36 per hour, is equal to about $1,500 per month, and $9,000 for the past 6 months that we have had nobody in this position. So quite a bit of money, quite a bit of time for our operations manager to be spending on this position. And for our emergency preparedness, like Pam was also talking about, it, prepares for any incident and plays a vital role to ensure that the employers and workers have the necessary equipment, and the training, know where to go, and keep themselves safe in case of an emergency. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, then they'll be prepared.
Amen. I talked to Ryan Hatch, who's, helps us with the Utah Local Government Trust, and he's gone over our premiums for the past couple of years, and I asked him to put together a hypothetical, looking at other organizations that have a designated safety officer or safety manager in place full-time, and then looking at our insurance premium. This year, our insurance premium went up 61% because we picked up 2020 where we had a lot of workers' comp losses. And as you can imagine, 2020 was, we were all scrambling, trying to keep everybody healthy, but we did see, because we didn't have those in-person meetings, and I directly correlate with that and feel like, Ryan is able to back me up on that sense of they did see more losses in all organizations, but they saw fewer of those losses if they had somebody designated in safety. We didn't have anyone in that position at that time. It's been part-time, and it's been very difficult to recruit for. So we just did the best we can as administration to jump in and try to do as much hands-on and in-person where we could, do training and so forth. This year is when we started back having at least a safety stand-down once a month. What that is reviewing incidents for the month prior and implementing the team appreciation recognition program. That's where our frontline staff are assigned a team, and they get an incentive award if their whole team is accident incident-free for the month prior. Well, we've been doing that for years, But there were 2020, 2021, where we were really struggling to get people together to report that information. As you know, if you know the score, then you know how to perform. But if you don't know the score, if we can't get it out there to the team, or if it gets lost somehow, we're gonna have more losses. So we can actually, say that, well, hypothetically, Ryan, put together some information and said that, over the past, 4 or 5 years, we could have saved, $57,000. Looking at our insurance premium that went to workers' comp up from 2021, it shot up $36,200 because we picked up 2020, which was that big loss year. So they take 3 years. We dropped off a low year in 18 where we did have more trainings and in-person interactions. Dropped that off and picked up 2020. We'll be carrying that, unfortunately, for a couple more years. But we really feel like we can drop it back down, if we have this position in place. Hope that all makes sense.
Pam,
Please ask questions.
What were the incidents in 2020 that drove up the workers' comp?
We had some injuries with, trips and falls, slips. I believe there was a shoulder injury, it was an employee falling on their shoulder, if I remember right, and then a couple of knee injuries, so it was significant. Yeah. But we've noticed that slips and falls trips are one of the biggest incidents that happen with workers' comp. We do a lot of training with David doing also, besides the safety stand downs, he's also sending out a Monday safety tailgate training, and that has shown to be very beneficial. We had those in place before, but again, when we're not directly interacting with people, we see significant losses. I mean, more significant losses. Yeah, so other questions before we get into the finances, but I think you'll see the cost benefit, all put together the information, and we are requesting to add these, as soon as you approve them today, hopefully. Start recruiting them. Go for it. Thanks, Paul.
So on this, we had a person in the safety coordinator position that was temporary, and they worked part of this year, and so there's an incremental cost there. This isn't all new cost as far as what we're planning to incur now. So we incurred some costs before. And so what I did was I looked at this, and you can see up on the screen that through 13 pay periods, 831 hours, their wage was $29.84, and so if I took the 13 pay periods and just allocated it out for the year, their total estimated annual wages would be the $49,594, and then their estimated annual benefits, and then total estimated annual wages and benefits was $68,490, and that would have been for the person that was in that position. So that's what we were incurring until that person left, but just if we projected it out for comparison purposes for the year. And then if, on the FTE, the 2022 projected annual hours, 2,080, which is a full-time employee, wage per hour, and I just chose the 2022 midpoint on that, so that wage can be higher or lower depending upon the person and their qualifications and experience. And so the total estimated annual wages is $72,904. Total estimated annual benefits for 2022 is about $39,000. And when I do this, I put family health insurance in there, which is a higher cost, and that really can affect that, but we do that just to err on the side, I guess, conservative as far as showing what the highest cost could be. It may be lower. And so the total estimated wages and annual benefits, if this position was full-time, is about $112,000. That difference is $43,000. And then also, Pam mentioned we'd like to, be recruiting for the position and hire a person as soon as possible. And so I just put in there estimated that 2 months of wages and benefits for 2022 would be about $19,000. And so we can see there's an incremental cost there and some of the assumptions that went into it, but it's not completely a new position in regards to cost.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And we can absorb this. We have under expense, in our personnel allocation that we could easily cover that cost this year. And then going forward, we do have it budgeted for the 2023 budget, proposed budget. So there's that one, and if it's okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Yes, does anyone have any questions on this one? No, we'll keep moving.
Okay, so this next one is data and program specialist, and this particular position would fall under Renee as administrative manager. We have noticed a big gap in our information systems, and including putting together data and information for this proposed budget. We scrambled as administration trying to gather information from multiple locations, and each manager having data to support what we want to bring to you, but we have to pull that. So Renee, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a bit of what this is going to look like for us and the benefits?
Yeah, the data and program specialists, we're envisioning that they'll provide the necessary analytics to really help us centralize that reporting system to where, as Pam had said, we're pulling data from multiple sources, and just to bring it all together to where they can do a continuous update each month, each quarter, as we get that information, and then also provide the reports on a centralized reporting system, what I envision as an MIS, Management Information System portal, that I've already started working on, where we'll have a template there to where we'll go through a certification process to where we can minimize the multiple reports that are currently being pulled out there by different supervisors, different managers, and just get a certification process in place and say, okay, these are our tonnages that we're reporting on. Make sure if there's any discrepancies, that we're questioning them, that we're finding out like where those discrepancies are. So some of the benefits for the staff in the district, again, like I said, just really streamline the data and information into a centralized location, agreed upon certification process. This third bullet here, I think, is something I'm really excited about, is enable a work ticket process, so that if there's changes to our website, changes to already certified reports, if there's any deletions, additions, some new reports that operations would like to see in process to help with their daily operations, that we go through this work ticket process where we make sure all the right eyes are seeing the information, have any questions or any recommendations, that we can get that in there, and also to help us with records management. Because then we're completely transparent on the information, where we're pulling it from, and if we get any requests from you all, from the public, that we've got this work ticket process where it basically tells the story of where we pulled the information, who saw it, who approved it, and where it's at that point. This will also help enable some more time for our operations folks to be out in the field and be with our drivers in the front line. And I put together here just a conservative estimate on how much time our operations manager, David, and collections managers, our asset manager, and customer service manager are spending on updating reports each day, and where we could help streamline that process to where the data analyst will take that over for them, and to where they can get out there and really be with the folks, which I think will benefit us all, even on safety, on everything else, get folks in there to do what they need to do. So right now, you're looking at about cost per year, about $16,000 a year. And I took the median cost per day based on their hourly rate. Again, this isn't specifically their rates, what they're making, but I just took the median for their position. And we're spending approximately $71 a day just to input data, from the operations team. So, streamline.
I guess, why is that an average rather than a sum? Are these people not all, they do that I guess it's 4 different people that are doing this every day.
Yeah.
So shouldn't it be a sum of the cost per day, not an average?
So the average hours per day, the reason I stuck with an average is because maybe on Monday, David may spend 3 hours versus a Thursday where he's not spending any time. doing an update on a revolving.
No, yeah, I'm third and fourth column though.
Oh, I gotcha.
If you've got 4 people doing it, it's not
Right.
$71, it's 100, 200, 50,
Got it. No, you're right.
it's $300 a day.
$300.
Yeah.
And the cost per year is 46,
Mhm.
50, about 55 to 60,000 a year.
You're right, Scott.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
helping
Yeah.
tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was telling a story, it's just unwinding my mind, it's just trying to wrap around.
Well, as you do
So I
that,
was making sure that it was,
No, you're
I
good.
was understanding what was,
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So again, Paul put together the financial analysis and same concept there, Paul? anything?
Yeah, we have a person in this position that works, and it's been temporary, there's really been not many benefits associated with it, and so that's their hours, 12 pay periods. This year, their wage per hour, total estimated annual wages, if you look at how much they work, about 32,640, and total estimated annual benefits, and that's really just, Medicare and Social Security, that there's not many benefits there, it's a temporary position, and so total estimated annual wages and benefits for the current position is $35,000, approximately $35,000, and then for this.
and that is a person that's currently doing this work. And these people are adding those hours on top of that person's work?
Yes, because the particular hours that Paul's analyzing this, person in the spot right now, she is mainly focused on the scrap
Okay, so
program.
that's happening,
So, yeah.
plus you have these
Yes,
These additional hours that are.
2, 5, 6, 7 hours a day that are being done by others.
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the FTE position goes, just the projected annual hours, 2,080. I took the midpoint for the job description. And also, again, that wage depends upon the person we hire, their experience and their qualifications, so that could vary. But if we do that, the total estimated annual wages are $50,356. And then I estimated annual benefits, again, with family health insurance, or health insurance for the family. Total estimated annual wages and benefits for 2022 would be $83,000. And then the difference there would be $48,000 increase. And then down below, same with the prior position that we discussed, we'd like to get recruiting for this position and hire a person, as soon as possible. And so I just put 2 months of wages and benefits for 2022 on there. So what would be the potential impact for this year?
And then the total amount of those two together would be $32,524. If, the midpoint and so forth, and those benefits. And if you'll just scroll down slightly, one of the other things I wanted to point out is that one of the key things that we hear constantly from our employees is that there's not a lot of career advancement opportunities. If you look at this pay scale that you have before you, this shows you where these positions will fall. They're highlighted in yellow there, in the packet, page 37, thank you, Karen. So it does give some opportunity, say if our one of our supervisors has an interest in safety and being specifically focused on this position, and if they have the qualifications to do so, they can apply and interview and have an opportunity for advancement. And then if you look down at the data program specialist, that too offers career advancement for employees. I do realize it's adding more liabilities, but I also feel like it's adding a huge asset for our organization and support. Questions or comments?
Yeah, Scott Little from White City. I've got just a couple of questions. It looks like, from my experience, I would think that you're still gonna have these managers all be involved with this, data collection, putting that together, because having a person dealing with the analytics, they're not going to generate necessarily the data, they've still gotta get that from the departments. And so I'm wondering how much time is still gonna be spent by these managers in connection with this. And the other question that I had, you know, it looks like this is more or less an accounting type role, and that's the type of thing that's very often done on a contract basis. It's something that the person handling that, would not necessarily have to handle most of that here. They can do it from their own office and that sort of thing. So I wondered if we've explored the possibility of doing a contract basis, person for that position.
Is that the data specialist one, right? Is that
Yes,
the specific one that you were talking about? Renee, I don't know if you want to start off speaking to that, then I can chime in.
Sure. No, you bet. So yes, the managers and the supervisors will still be involved in reviewing the information and data. And that's where, I envision that MIS portal will be to where they can click on it and see the information, where right now they're doing a lot of data entry into their reports to get the information. Whereas if we have the data analyst doing that for them, they'll still have that report, yes, to be very involved, to where, you know, it's monitoring KPIs, key performance indicators, but to where that information will be there for them. So hopefully that helps.
And then I can just speak to contracting out. We've tried contracting out other services, not specifically this one, but this one being part-time. And when we're not able to fill it, or if they are working off-site, we've noticed a disconnect. And anytime we have contracted out for, let's say, GIS, we tried that for a while to try to save costs. There is a huge disconnect because we're right here present doing our operations, and as you can see by the FTE count, there's only 10 administrative positions, and everybody else is out doing services, direct services. So the thought is, like Renee said, the managers can pull the data, give the reports to us as administration so that we can help plan and budget, and then they can also give that feedback to the front line. Here's how we're performing as a team. Here's what we're doing with garbage. Here's what we're doing recycling and so forth. And where can we improve? If that makes sense. I hope we answered your question.
Yeah, I still see a data specialist as being more of a bookkeeping / accounting role, and I still question whether that's something that they really need to be here physically as opposed to contracting that out. And by contracting that out, it would allow us to, you know, to contract for less than full-time if that's necessary, or to expand that if we have more need. And that would help us. I mean, we would avoid paying for the benefits and so forth by doing that. The other thing is you mentioned that gave an opportunity for advancement within the organization. And I'm not as familiar with the organization as the rest of you here, but it would seem like there would be very few people in the organization that would necessarily have those skilled, you know, have the skill and the training for that. That's a fairly specialized thing. In a sense, I mean, it's like hiring an in-house attorney as opposed to contracting with an attorney. And I just don't see that as necessarily being a position that the best use of personnel would be use that as an advancement within the organization. Maybe you could straighten me out on that if I'm incorrect.
Would you mind scrolling down, Renee, so the positions that would have an opportunity here, let's say we have an equipment operator that's out there on the road, but they're going to school because we have a tuition reimbursement program for our employees to try to help them to advance careers. A lot of our drivers don't want to be out there on the truck all the time for the rest of their career because it's quite labor intensive and can be hard on the body. So there would be that opportunity for one of them to get some schooling, apply for the job. Our HR payroll specialist one of the things to note is their customer service representatives do some data entry now, but their time is pulled with direct customer service and answering questions and calls. So the thought is that this particular position is gonna help with gathering information, analyzing it, and helping with the reporting. We didn't explore contracting it out. We've tried contracting for services, and it just hasn't worked just because of the disconnect. To have somebody here invested in us, and we can invest in them, brings a lot of value to the products that we're trying to provide the public. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sway you, but the request is for the FTE, and I get that it is a liability. I totally understand that. We weighed that out and feel like the benefit will outweigh that liability.
Pam, where does this data come from and how would this person collect it?
Renee, go for it.
Yeah, it comes everywhere from, Trans-Jordan, from the collection centers. We also have, other, Paul, what are some?
Like some of the other ones, like Salt Lake County Fleet,
Yeah.
like maintenance, fuel, those type of things, Trans-Jordan, Salt Lake County landfill, you know, the recycling entities we deal with, those type of things would be some of the information we'd be getting.
And then we also have systems internally, like for our call systems from customer service, being able to monitor how many chats we do, how many emails we do, our customer interactions. It's really, we have that internally, thankfully. So those influence some reports.
Excuse me, I was just gonna add too, with fleet, that's like fuel, you know, both CNG and diesel, that's maintenance per truck, miles, those types of things that we get into in a pretty detailed level, and we want to continue to do that and expand it if we can.
And where they would get it from then, like currently David, I know, and Andy, they get emails with reports. That we just started getting them weekly from, I know, some of the landfills, and so we would just make sure that they're the centralized person that would get that information to them.
And I can say right now, we have delayed responses because we can't capture the efficiencies as well, and we can't get that information in a more timely manner. So, I can say that we had, when we were a little bit smaller and didn't have so many homes out there and so many drivers and trucks, we could capture that a little bit easier, but we have expanded, and I have to say, with not growing administratively, we really kind of lagged, and it is a scramble for us to gather information. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that it would just be so nice if we could just have it a little more timely, so we can respond more effectively, and you know, try to keep costs low in the long run.
And I think too, just better decision making. We've had a case with the landfill where we're looking at some information and we get a monthly, by the time we get a monthly and they get the report to us, we're 5 or 6 weeks out, you know, from when it actually happened, and we're trying to get that weekly. So when things happen, we can, you know, address it right then or more timely. Because a lot of times when you wait 6 weeks, people have forgotten what happened and what was the situation. So I think a part of the side from operationally is just, like Renee said, get more timely information, which will help us make better decisions. And I think it will help the employees too at that point in time too.
Is there any one central person collecting all of this now and then compiling the different reports necessary for the different departments of Warford? Or is it, this person seems to be collecting this information, trying to put it in here, and hopefully the left hand will be reading this information and discerning how that will affect the budget decisions?
The latter of the two.
The latter.
So we've got, you know, Andy pulling complete information, David's pulling some other reports. We've got Dan that is getting, our GIS coordinator, getting some additional reports right now. We've got, the finance department also pulling some different, so just recently, in the past, like, few months, we started doing some tonnage reconciliations, and we found some discrepancies in 2 different reports, and we were able to figure out why. And so just in that exercise alone, it helped us, just foresee, like, why it would make sense to have a centralized spot, the certification process, making sure that we get definitions right and understand all of that.
Do you think it will help hold some of the vendors and some of the costs tighten that up
Yes,
and be more accountable with each one of the different vendors
Yes.
and contracts that you have.
yes, absolutely.
So there might, in the long run, be a little bit of cost savings.
yes.
And the value, and then one thing I was just gonna say, the value of with information really does, the quicker you get information, the more valuable it is for all of us. And the farther out you go, the less valuable it gets, because if we're talking 6 weeks out, like with the landfill information, we're already into a new period and things could have changed. And so I've always thought, not just here, but everywhere I've worked, the quicker you can get information, the better off we are as far as decision making and doing the right thing as far as operationally.
This is Keith from Brighton. Just one comment after Councilman Bracken brought up rather than average cost, but the total cost. The management or manager's input or their workload truly is on an annualized basis valued about $66,000 based upon these numbers. If you can reduce their workload by 50%, there's only a cost of $33,000. And that if you add that to the current position, which is roughly $35,000, you're expending $78,000. If you hire a full-time person, a permanent full-time person in-house with benefits, the difference in cost is only costing the organization $5,000 a year.
Yeah, and the potential for cost savings certainly is better than 5,000, because when you have those reports, a lot of times when you just described it, maybe finance team had a great look at that report and they're making decisions off that, but if there's disconnect with the operations team, because they don't see the same report matter and things like that, so it really creates some confusion and it's just really hard to have a good with your, if you don't have a good justification for data. Data is no good if you can't have, if you don't use it, I can analyze it and use it, for sure.
And we have a lot of data out there, it's just
Okay.
bringing it all together and making sense of it, which is another, bullet in there, on what they would do, is work with me and work with the administrative team on bringing some information that we can bring.
Yeah, underneath it's above and above the stove.
I think, board member Little might have another question. I'm sorry.
Sitting on the table, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, we've talked about this position, dealing with the analytics. And when I look at the, projected pay rate on this, that seems to
Well, there you go.
be a little closer to, what
Let me get this crap out of here. Sorry.
and so, the question I've got is, for what we're looking for, are we gonna need
The
potential
whole table down, because it's just,
at this pay scale, so that we're gonna,
Can I interrupt you for
so if you move this garbage that way, the whole table can slide this way and get out of the way. So I'll start moving this out of the way too.
Sorry.
that's fine. Yes.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I guess my question is, if we hire someone at this rate, are we wanting to have more skill in terms of data analytics and things such as that, so that we're gonna end up needing to boost this up to attract someone that does what we're actually looking for?
Let's go back up to the qualifications and the MINs. I think, to answer your question just briefly, the idea is that this person's doing a lot of the data entry and, helping Renee to compile the information. So as far as the management level, Renee would be the one to compile it and put it together and bring it forward with the report. So am I describing that correctly, Renee?
Yeah, they would assist me with that, and hopefully that would be a great coaching opportunity to get them, you know, skilled at that eventually, yeah.
Right, and when they develop those other skills, then I would assume that they're, in order to get them to stay, we're gonna have to raise that pay. Would you anticipate that?
sorry, board member Disharon is trying to join the meeting. So that, I don't know, I mean, it's a very good question, what does the future look like? Anytime that we may need to do a reclassification for a job, I would come back and say, it looks like this is gonna evolve into this other position, and maybe move up the pay scale.
But we're more talking right now about
Right,
just
yeah.
pure data entry.
Yes.
So, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day approximately that we're paying managerial positions to try and do data entry. So I think we have to do our best to take that away for sure, and put those out, some of the hours we're spending, like Keith mentioned, into just looking at the data rather than trying to enter it. So, and we're already paying somebody right now to do some of that. So,
If I could make just a couple of comments. It's interesting that there's been no conversation, debate at all about safety position.
Yeah.
And that seems to me to be a pretty much slam dunk because of the sort of web of regulations, OSHA, et cetera, and probably clear, even maybe unquantifiable cost savings of having that safety position. In fact, that's kind of, but now, and I appreciate Board Member Little's correct concern that we need to make sure that we're stewards of the public funds. We need to make sure that we're not just saying, oh yeah, let's just hire somebody. And so I think it is a legitimate question whether this could be contracted. I believe, I'm convinced in studying this and conversations we've had, not just here, but in our pre-board meeting, with the chairman, the vice chair, and the staff, that the purpose for this, first of all, we already have a part-time person, a temporary position doing this data, so we're simply adding to that. Second, the purpose for this is to streamline information, integrate information, make it in-house to the nth degree, and not just to contract with someone. I actually am an attorney, and I spend I spend about half my legal day doing contract work for a big national company. But the work I do is by piece. I am given a piece of work to do, and I do that work. I'm not integrated with the day-to-day operations of the company, which has several thousand employees. This position, even though we're a small operation, this position would be an integral part of the ongoing operation of Wasatch Front Waste. And I'm not sure it's amenable. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not convinced that it's amenable to a contract position. And seems like there was some other important point I was going to make. But anyway, I'm in favor of both positions. And I'm convinced that it's going to be better simply to pay a little bit extra, have an FTE rather than this temporary position. That way, this individual, under Renee's great leadership, can integrate the data entry and report making completely, and then we can get a better snapshot financially, operationally, of what's happening day by day, rather than pushing it out. So anyway, I'm convinced that this is better to have an FTE rather than a contract, but I think that's a great conversation. In fact, we always ought to make that kind of analysis, so.
Does anyone else have any questions or concerns they'd like to share?
This is Cindy Sharkey from Sandy. I appreciate all of this conversation, touching every edge of how to best save money, but also the efficiency of it. When I think about contract services, just as was just said, often they're project-based. And so there's just a future timeline for submittal of the work. And even if it's, even if it's bookkeeping related, whether it's payroll processing or tax filings or things like that, it's not something that you're looking for data input every single day. I think about the contract work that we that we have with Sandy City. And often the contractors are not available on our time, but they're available on their time. So I see this data that's been presented to us that every day we have managers working on updating data, and every day we're needing to have new good data to act on and act upon. So I think I'd agree. While I appreciate really looking very deeply at how to best save money to accomplish this, it does appear to me too that the value of the data and the need to have it updated constantly would mean that it's probably best accomplished by an FTE as well. So I too would support both of these positions and the justifications that have been presented to us by staff. So thank you for that.
Dan Givens again. I remember the other point I was going to make, and that is that contract staff requires more supervision by someone in the organization. And so this actually may be counterproductive for Renee's team, because Renee would have to be monitoring and making sure that this contract individual, if we went contract, would be doing the correct work and doing it the way that we want it done. So that was just my other point, my important point that with my
Thank you. Thank you.
I just have one comment. If we anticipate any growth in this organization, I think it would also facilitate that and be helpful for that, so I support both of those.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
I do, if there's no other comments, I would go to a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve for two full-time, employees.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Anna and a second by Diane. Do we have, oh, you're good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I was gonna pause, 'cause this really, because it goes to our budget for next year as well. Are these included
Yes,
into,
in 2023, yes.
and it,
We
okay,
were
now speaking, don't anybody throw anything. So if the proposed budget, if we have reductions or something there, that would apply to these positions as well? Or if there was changes, because you have a proposal
Oh,
for
yes, we would
the
make.
entire
that
budget, it would have to, okay.
We would make that adjustment for the tenant.
Just saw that they were, you know, you're adding on some, and this is a good chunk of what the increase is for the overall budget, so,
Yeah.
that was going to be my point.
Okay, so we had a motion, second, and we voted for all in favor. And then, are there any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that is approved unanimously. Let's move to 3.2, General Manager's Report.
And I was gonna ask for the interest of time to maybe shift, but maybe I can breeze through my report quickly. Yeah, but I will leave that up to you, Madam Chair.
You tell me how you want it.
Yeah, could we move?
Yeah, we
Lane to acting Melissa, since she's here, and have her come up, and I'll
Okay,
shift.
so we're gonna make an adjustment in the order of the meeting. We're gonna move 3.2 after 3.3, and we're going to allow Melissa Cotter to do her 3.3 review of salary market analysis and recommendations as part of the 2023 budget.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I know that we're short on time and we're throwing a lot of information at you. I'm hoping everyone has a copy of my final report. Mine's not in color, but your guys' are beautiful in color. So, I'm just gonna briefly, and this is really going to be high level. So, just to kind of give you a comfort level, I've been working on this since the board approved me to come in and do a wage analysis. And I've been working directly with Ashley and Pam to make sure that job descriptions are accurate and correct, make sure that the market data that I'm looking at is reliable and valid, and also to make sure that the data that I'm bringing back really represents that position. We spent a lot of time looking at cost analysis, and then also with September's pre-board meeting, we spent at time and at length with the chair and the board chair going over all of the data as to what they wanted to look at and discuss. And then I also had a dress rehearsal last Friday with board member Barney, and he was a tough cookie. He had a lot of questions, and so I really feel like the due diligence has been done on this market analysis, and I hope that as I kind of, again, high level go over it, that you can kind of have that comfort level as well and the recommendations that we're making for the 2023 plan year. Just to kind of give new board members a little bit of a brief history, the last time I was contracted to come in and do a market analysis was September of 2019. Think about what's happened between 2019 and 2022 in a lot of your municipalities. What has happened? Wages have just gone out of control. They've gone crazy, and it's been hard to manage. That was for all positions, and so that was effective for plan year 2020. And since then, again, because things have gone out of control, especially with our skilled labor, those positions that require the CDL certification, or even just the ones that are our container specialists that are out there, they're hard to recruit for because everybody's willing to pay top dollar for employees who are willing to show up and perform work and what is needed. And so we actually did come to the board, as you recall, a couple of times requesting mid-year changes for those positions based upon market data. We've also changed our compression management matrix to allow for all experience and education when we calculate where an employee, whether they're appointed or merit, to fall within the pay ranges. And so we've done a lot of work. Yes.
For new board members, and that is verified in education and experience.
Yes.
It's been very detailed how that comes in.
Right, employees had to bring in transcripts of college education and credits. They had to provide proof of CDL certification. Reference checks were made on past employment. We really didn't just take the employee's word for it because it was money that we were investing into employees to not only recruit them, but also to tell current employees that we value you, we value what you brought to the table, and we want to make sure that we are retaining you, so that you know that this is where you want to be, this is where you want to stay with your career. So thank you for that. I'm just going to quickly go to page 6. I just want to outline really quick table 1, which is the surveys. All of the surveys that we select, I consult for many companies in doing a market analysis. Primarily my niche is in the public sector. And this is not uncommon of the data that other public sector employers will purchase and use as far as comparing market data. In the past, we could just primarily look at public sector data, right? Because the benefits were so amazing, and they really were a contrast between the private sector and the public sector. Not so much now. Employees really are looking for that paycheck. They're looking for, what are you going to give me in order to actually show up for work? I don't really care about the golden ticket in 30 years or 35 years. And so a lot of our data, especially from what we did in 2019 to what I did for this new market analysis, is all industries, as you can see. But one of the key surveys that we use is called TechnologyNet. I'm sure a lot of you may be familiar with it. You might be even using it in your municipalities, where you pull just government data. It's reported by all municipalities who are part of this database, and so it truly reflects government data. And what I do is I use that, one, for market data, right, because it's your competitors in the public sector, but also, two, it's a great benchmark to see if it's too high or too low with maybe these other data that are kind of a combination of both private and public sector data. One of the questions that board member Barney brought up was with TechnologyNet. You can see that it's already been aged to January 1st, 2023. The reason why is because different agencies report at different times during the year. And so I had to actually pull in that data and age it so that everything matched in the system before I reported it into this analysis. Okay. One more thing on this page was job matching. Another issue that was brought up was, well, here, are you just looking at job title? When I actually look at the third-party surveys, I'm looking at what does the survey summary represent, and does it represent what that position is doing? more than likely, it's not gonna be 100% direct match, right? What WFWRD does might be completely different than what Waste Management does or other companies. And so truly what third-party surveys do is they summarize very, very broad what those duties may involve. And then I look at it, and if it has at least a 7% match, I feel like it's at least giving me a direct match or a benchmark for what I use, okay? Let's go ahead and go to page 7. I'm just gonna really highlight quickly on aging calculations. This is critical, as you can see in table 1 that I just went over. Every survey has a different effective date. And so by aging it to a true date, and in this case, we're aging it to the beginning of the plan year, which is January 1st, 2023, it allows kind of an apples-to-apples comparison. The aging calculations that I use is based upon what is the average pay increase that Utah employers paid in 2022. So I pulled that data from Employers Council, very reputable consulting company that polls third-party surveys. They're current and relevant in their methodology. In 2022, there was a 4.5% pay increase across the board in Utah. In 2023, that report has not come out, but other reports show that it's going to be probably pretty similar to what's happened in 2022. I came in with a recommendation of a 5% aging calculation, primarily because I'm thinking if we did a 3% COLA and a 2% merit, that equals 5%. But also, what happens with WFWRD is that we start at market, right? January 1st, we're at market. And then by July 1st, the rest of the municipalities have their fiscal year start, and WFWRD now becomes below market. So we're hoping with that extra 0.5% that we're going to still be able to remain competitive when budget talk starts happening for those municipalities with the July 1 fiscal year. So
We had in 2022 a 4% with 2% COLA and 2% merit. So, yeah, we fell behind already.
yeah, 2022, we came to the board this time last year with a 2% COLA, 2% merit. And you'll see from my market analysis that even that wasn't enough to kind of keep up. We tried really hard. So if we go to page 8, I'm just really going to hit really quick on what a market reference point is. And in order to do that, if you guys want to turn to Appendix A, this kind of just shows you what was done for probably the position that we have the most employees in. This is on page 12. I know it's really hard to read because there's a lot of data, but you're going to look and you're going to say, oh yeah, I saw those surveys, right? I noticed that that's what you told. I see your survey effective date. I show that, you know, this is the cut to market that I pulled for those particular surveys. You're going to see the number of companies, the number of incumbents, which is the number of employees that those surveys responded to. I always pull median data, which is the true midpoint of the market. It really, truly gets rid of your outliers. If you've got companies that report high, you've got companies report low, you know that your true point is your median data, and that's a compensation best practice. But again, I have to age the data. So that's where I aged it to 5%, and you can kind of see that in that column. And then based upon the weighting is where that last column shows the total for each survey. Each survey got 100% weighting. I don't value one survey over the other. And then what I do is, because I have true midpoint data, I average. I make sure that there's not a pay disparity in the data. If there was a report for an equipment operator to only be paid $30,000, that would kind of trigger me to say, yeah, that's probably not a good match, right? The data wasn't reported correctly. Again, if comp data would have said, oh, we pay equipment operators $100,000 a year, you would also say, that's probably not a correct match either. But what I like about this data is if you see technology net, it comes in at just over $50,000, $50K a year. My overall weighted average is $52K. What I like about that is it keeps WFWRD competitive. But it also supports it with other data that's within the Utah market, because you're not just competing with other municipalities with this CDL skill, you're competing with private sector. You know, you see road construction, you see, you know, contractors, they're wanting these employees as well. They want that skill set. If you see down below, I take the midpoint, and that really becomes how I build a range. So, keeping true to what we've already set up with WFWRD, we do a 40% spread, which is basically 40% for minimum, all the way to maximum. And so that midpoint per hour, just because this is more of an hourly job to kind of grasp our heads around, comes in at $25.02. And because of our compression matrix, we know it's really, really almost impossible to hire at minimum. And so as a board, we presented and you've approved that we start this position at the 25th percentile, which for 2023, we're recommending $22.90. So I go over this really fast, but this process happened with every single position that we've reviewed. So just turn your page to page 14. This is really the nuts and bolts of all the work that has been done over the last couple of months. And I'm just going to kind of step you through so you're kind of familiar with how I kind of just summarize the data. The top column says 2022 pay plan midpoint, which is basically what we currently have and what our pay ranges are built around, is that 2022 pay plan midpoint. The next column that says calculated hourly MRP, basically what that is what I just went through. I just went through all of the averages of all of the surveys, and then that's the hourly midpoint of that. And then if you take a percentage difference of it, basically what this is telling us, I'll just pull in, just because we talked about the equipment operator, even with all of the mid-year adjustments, even with the COLA changes that we've made every year to the range since pay plan 2020, it's still 7% below market. And you can kind of see how that reflects with every position that we've analyzed. One thing that we wanted to make sure, just because of that aging calculation, again, of 3% COLA, 2% merit, was that every position at least was adjusted 3%. And so that's why you're going to see in these 4 positions that they have at least a fair adjustment in the range. They were probably at market this whole time, and maybe these positions just weren't as hard to recruit for. You know, I don't know why those positions with the market level was under 3%. But we, as a consultant, I recommend that to treat all positions fair, we need to at least adjust them to the 3%. So we agreed to do that, and that's kind of what this shows. I know I went over this fast, but I want to point out a couple of positions. One that probably is the elephant in the room is that QA technician, that quality assurance technician. That shows a market adjustment of 20%. That seems like super high. And I went back to look at my data in 2019, and this position is a really unique position. It's not unique just to WFWRD, but basically what this position does is it does all it's kind of like the public outreach position. It's trying to notify the public about, you know, recycling and how waste management works, and just kind of be the face sometimes of WFWRD. But they also go inspect. They go and they check the carts and the bins, and they make sure what's being put in there is correct. Pretty hard to match in the market, but within TechnologyNet, there are landfill inspectors who do very similar duties, but they maybe might not be doing the public outreach. But in other agencies or municipalities, they have wastewater inspectors. And even though it's a different utility, they're doing very similar. They are going out and they're doing the public outreach, and they're also doing inspections for their particular utility. And so the data that I had in 2019, there was just not great data that supported the matches. And so we did what we could in looking at the data back then, and we felt comfortable with where it fell. Now, with 2023 data, there was more data that was reported, and so we were able to make this recommendation, and that's why you're seeing such a high percentage increase. Any others that you might want to just briefly talk about or have me answer questions about?
This is, sorry, Scott Bracken with Cottonwood Heights. These are table to a table. This is not actual, for some it is what they're actually being paid.
This is position, not employee.
Right. So this is, that's just changes from, I mean, because some of these numbers are, are fairly good sized. When we get to the budget proposal increase, that's actual payroll increase?
Correct.
Okay, and with, this stuff is included in that?
Yes, that's correct. And Melissa will get into her analysis for costs, that only, we were understaffed at the time that she did her analysis. We had 85 FTEs in place, and we have 94 total. So we had at least 5 driver shortages. Our HR payroll specialist had taken another career opportunity outside, and our customer service representative, we had a vacancy there as well.
If I could just, Dan, give us the holiday, if I could just comment, to Scott's point, this is simply proposing a methodology, to put a methodology in place that is organization-wide, that is going to be reflected in the budget. But the methodology, the rationale behind the methodology is to make sure that we are market savvy and able to staff these positions over a long period of time. And it's specifically not geared toward an individual or any individual in the organization. This is going to hopefully far outlive any of us, so.
Any other questions, comments? To just kind of show what we're looking at for the pay plan 2023, go to page 16, and that just kind of breaks down. Again, your midpoint is basically what my calculated market reference point. Your minimum is a 40% spread from the minimum to the maximum. And then based upon the board-approved positions that start at the 25th percentile, those are a calculated hourly rate based upon that. And then we also calculated basically a 5% reduction for your temporary and seasonal pay positions. And so basically what our hope is that with our temporary employees, that if they want to apply for and are able to receive a full-time merit position, that it would be a 5% bump, which would probably encourage them to apply for that as there's an opening. And that way we kind of have just that one more step in trying to recruit people and kind of even have like a trial period, right? If you like them as a temporary employee and you want them to come in and work full-time. So this is what we are proposing, but before we request that, I also want to go over costs, because it's great to look at market data, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't afford it, if it doesn't fit in the budget, then, it's great work, but what do we do, right? So, with the cost analysis, like Pam said, when I do a cost analysis, I'm only looking at active employees. I'm not projecting what that would be in the future. That's kind of why we have Paul here. He's kind of amazing at what he does. Renee, I'm back on page 8, sorry. I didn't navigate you there. You're good. And again, all of these blank pages in between, I'm trying to conserve pages to have you print front and back. So that's kind of why it looks a little odd with the blank pages. When I worked with Ashley and we started the cost analysis, it's a lot of work. And so this is as of August 14th. Again, turnover has happened since then, right? It's not like you can just project what's going to happen to January 1st. And so I just took a real-time date, and at that time there were 85 active appointed and merited employees. And I took their current pay, I took their current, if they were maybe eligible for a merit pay between August 14th and the end of the year, we calculated that into it as well, so that we had a true hourly rate as of January 1st, 2023, and then we plugged in these new pay range dates. And this is the analysis that I came up with, if you want to go to page 9. With the pay range costs, even with the merit adjustments, there were only 2 employees that fell below their position's pay range minimum. This is the proposed pay range minimum. There were no employees above their position's pay range minimum, and that really contributes to the fact that the board has adopted the compression management matrix. It just allows employees to hit 100% of the range, but you're never worried about those employees that are gonna fall over. But we do take care of them, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. The compression analysis, that was basically saying, okay, we've adopted a compression management, and that's Appendix D. I don't necessarily know if you need to go to it or not. But basically, it's like, okay, these are new ranges. We're gonna put them in the same compression management that we have in the past. And then, again, if there were employees, after I placed them into the range that were below 3%, we made sure that as of January 1st, they were getting that 3% COLA. So this is kind of the breakdown of what happened from that. So this is what's approved already by the board. So basically, for positions that start at less than year 1, it takes 20 years, roughly, to get up to 100%. Positions starting at the 25th percentile, they start at the 25th, and it takes them 15 years to get to the top. Okay, so will you go back to page 9, Renee? Hopefully you guys aren't getting scroll headaches. There's a lot to this on screen. So basically, the compression analysis shows that 82 of the 85 employees were below their assigned range percentage, which is pretty true, right? You saw all of how far under market these positions were. So that really isn't going to be anything alarming to people. 3 employees are on or above their assigned range percentage, which means that when they were hired in, maybe they just came with more, they just were higher in their market, or they advanced up within their positions. And even though they don't fall within it, they're still getting paid at least marketable wages and didn't need an adjustment.
So they're above the max?
No, they're just above where we would have placed them in the compression management. So say, for example, the compression management calculates them at 50%, they might fall in at 60%. So they might just be above it based upon what their pay is currently. 4 employees have less than a 3% pay increase, and those are the 4 that we're recommending to at least get that, and that's part of our cost analysis. There will be 21 employees who are at the max. Okay? And there's 2 additional employees that are currently, they would be at the 95th percentile, but if they were eligible for a merit increase, it would bring them over, and they would be at the max as well. So in 2023, you're going to see 23 employees that are at 100% of their max, which is not a bad thing. What that is really showing is out of the 85 employees, you've got 23 that have the skills, have the education, and have committed to WFWRD and made a career out of WFWRD. And that's just as important as bringing people through the door and recruiting them. Okay? So what my recommendations are, just because there has been such a difference in the market analysis, as you saw, we pay, it's called a performance incentive pay for those employees who are at the max. They receive kind of a set pay instead of a pay increase. And so for non-supervisory in 2022, it was $1,500. We're recommending to go up to $2,000 for that. And then for supervisory employees, for 2022, it's $2,000. We're recommending to go up to $2,500. So basically what that says is we still value you, you're still performing, we still want you here, you're at the max of your range, and until we make another COLA adjustment or a market adjustment, you probably won't see an increase in your wage, but you're still valued to us, and we're still willing to give you a performance incentive pay as long as you continue to perform to meet those requirements.
And then would you mind, sorry, just speaking to the fact that that does include compensating for any overtime that people may have through the year? Does that make sense?
What we tried to do is we looked at where the majority of the employees are at 100% of their range. And primarily it's for your equipment operators, your equipment and your leads. And we looked at that and we said, okay, if they would have gotten a 3%, what would have that amount been? And then we times it by 2,080 hours. But we do know that there is overtime opportunity as well. And we didn't want to discount that. And so we rounded up high enough that we felt like it would compensate compensate for the overtime, but not so much that they were receiving this high performance incentive pay that was more than what they would be making with their hourly pay. Yes.
On this, $2,000, performance increment, is that like an annual bonus? Or is that something they get 1 year and then they get another one that boosts them up another year?
It is not a bonus. We don't call it that here. We just call it an incentive pay, and it's given to them at their merit date if they pass their performance review.
Okay, is it a one-time thing? And so then if they get that the next year, then they just, okay,
Yeah.
but it doesn't build, so, okay.
Yeah, once you hit 100%, there's nowhere else to go.
Right.
But we don't want them to say, well, I guess I served my time at Woodford, it's time to go somewhere else. And so this gives them that incentive to continue to show up and perform. Great question, thank you. All right, I just want to show the table on page 10. This is my analysis, which means that it's really, again, what the cost difference is to implement this plan with the 85 active appointed and merit employees. Again, it's not counting those that we didn't have filled at that current time. And this total does not include the employer-required taxes or benefit costs. That's where Paul, the expert, the guru, subject matter expert, what else do you want me to tell you? That's where he comes into play. And so this is me giving him my spreadsheet of the active. He looks at this, and then he comes in and plugs in more detailed information and accounts for those positions that don't have an FTE in them at this time. So from there, I just have one more point. This total, this $505,000, brings us to market as of January 1st, 2023. I wish I had a magic ball. I wish I could just look into the future and kind of see what 2023 is going to do. I feel confident with this. One of the scenarios that we did present was to come to you as a board and make a recommendation to change the compression management to reduce the equipment operators and the lead equipment operators from 15 years to 10 years, which means that we would move them, their start rate would start closer in. And when we did that analysis, it came in, and this is again not benefits, and this is not taxes, it came in with an additional $200,000 that we were going to come to the board with you. At this time, I don't feel like we need to, but I do want to at least have you guys be thinking about in 2023. We don't know what a lot of the other municipalities are going to do for 2023. I mean, you all know what happened in 2022. You saw, you know, municipalities come in with 6%. Some of them came in up in Davis County as high as 12%. You know, it's like a cat and mouse game that we're still trying to stay competitive in the market, but we're not trying to come to you as a board today and say, oh, we're going to guess what's going to happen July 1, and we want to inflate it right now so that we can be prepared. But we do want you to let you know that we may need to come mid-year after we see what the impact is and what our turnover rate starts to hit, like June through August. And if it starts to go down and we can't recruit, we may be back here requesting a compression management adjustment. But at this time, I don't recommend it.
And that would just be for the leads and the equipment operators or something.
Well, that's 72% of our workforce.
Yes, pretty much.
I mean, I understand the perception that there's no way to advance, get promoted within. You've got 72 jobs chasing 20. And that's not even a realistic comparison because they're apples to oranges. So, I did have one question on table 3, the performance incentive pay, that would be a flat rate on their merit date. Is this the 2% merit pay, is that factored based on when people would actually get it? Because they don't get it on January 1.
Right.
So
Right.
that's not a full annualized amount, it's just kind of what it is for 2023.
Yeah, you were right. And did you project that out when you did your 20? Yeah.
And the 369 number at the top, 92,000 of it is two positions we just approved?
No, this is everybody getting put into their position based upon the compression management. It does not include the two new positions, because we don't have active employees in there at this time. So that does not include it, but Paul's told us to. Good question, thank you.
Paul's back in here.
Yeah. So, because when we got this, I looked at that and I'm like, wow, that's way different than the number I did after I ran through all this. And part of it is those positions, the vacant positions, and then also we still have temporary positions that are in there too. And so there's a fairly significant difference, but that's why that occurred.
Yeah, let me make a comment, Dan, given this is a swallow hard kind of increase. There's no doubt about it. But I am convinced that we're going to see cascading negative consequences if we don't stay up to market. We have a fairly lean, small staff, and to lose key employees because the grass is greener elsewhere would it be really, really down, real negative for our organization and very difficult to recover from that kind of thing. I just think it's very important that we stay in line with the market, and that's exactly what Melissa's work is proposing to us, and I'm in support of it.
Yes, and I'll echo that, and in that, this analysis simply looks at positions also. We're not talking about personnel, employees, or anything, we're just talking about positions, and at any point, if the grass is greener, or retirement's greener, or whatever the circumstance may be, that those positions have to be filled, and the only way we fill those positions with good qualified people is if we stay competitive in the market. Okay, does anyone have any other questions, concerns about this analysis? Rob.
Scott Little from White City. I'm assuming that this analysis, we're kind of looking at things as they've been over the last year or so, where it's been hard to attract employees. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but there are a lot of economists that are indicating over the next several years that there may be enough shrinkage in the available jobs that we're going to have a lot of people looking for jobs. And I mean, I guess that's something we ought to be aware of. I don't know how we factor that in.
I think the best way I could respond to that is why I'm an advocate for these third-party surveys.
Mm-hmm.
They really know the heartbeat of the market and what's going on. They're not only surveying employers of what are you paying, but what are you projecting for the next year. And all indicators that I have reviewed and looked at for 2023 say that it's going to be really, even at the national level. National pay increases for 2022 was 4%. Nationally for 2023, it's projected at 4.1. So I feel confident for 2023, but again, Woodford retains me. We start talking about plan years for the next year come like July, August, if we're not going to do a market increase. And we put a cost analysis to come to the board during the fall. And by that time, we'll know what's happening in 2024. So we're always trying to stay competitive with market, knowing that, yeah, there might be some factors down the road that you might not need as many employees. But in this industry and the growth of the Salt Lake Valley, I don't see Woodford struggling. I see them still trying to fill their positions with great skilled employees.
Mm-hmm.
It's for sure been, well, since I've been on the board, how about you, Scott? We've always struggled to keep our FTEs, so our driver's positions.
Yeah, it's been hard for the last little while. There was, it seems it's been a lot harder over the last 4 or 5, 6 years, where we started to run people ragged.
Yeah, and I think it's the growth in this valley and things like that, and I don't disagree that we might see some slowing of that, but there's nothing in our economic outlook that shows a huge impact of slowing in this area, and so we just continue to compete with the private market, and it's so hard to keep those positions filled.
things go to the point where there's actual retraction or decreases in these numbers, I mean, then the board decides, well, do we actually go and back to that back, or do we just hold on and take the 0% increase year over year for a couple until it does match up?
Yeah, I don't think that once you've raised these, I don't think you can lower them.
No, it's hard. I mean, we actually did that in Colin Heights years ago, where the actual net suggested increase was minus 0.5%, and we were like, yeah, we'll just keep everybody flat. Because you're right, once it goes out, you don't usually take it back.
You'll lose a lot of employees if you cut it.
Yes, sure.
Well, and in that scenario, then you are the most desirable employer.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have more choice of great candidates, so. But this is a snapshot as of January 1st, 2023, so that's really what's before us here.
The one other point is, it's fairly easy to figure out what that is monthly, still, until we get, we keep adding more and more people out in Harriman, but, you know, the $500,000 is 50 cents. That's 50 cents on your bill every month for every household in the district. So to maintain that, that's the increase that you have to look at.
This is Robert Vignon, Immigration Canyon. I think one thing to keep in mind is that inflation this year has done a number, 11%. Wages in the private sector, 7 to 11% raise. I mean, we're not talking something that's out of the norm. These are numbers that have to be met in order to keep.
Right.
So I think everything presented today is very reasonable and just keeps a pulse on what's happening out there. So thank you.
Anyone else?
No, it's numbers, it's me just disseminating numbers.
Very valuable.
Hannah, thank you so much. You did a great job. It is very valuable. I use this example many times in different boards I sit on, because this analysis and this strategy is really key, I think, in keeping it in place and keeping it in the market, but not, and being good stewards of the public funds.
Do we need a direction on this?
When we get to the proposed budget, yeah, absolutely. So Renee, if you would mind going back to the packet itself.
Do you want to, do 3.4 next, or do you want to do 3.2 next?
Well, I know that last month, I was asked, the staff was asked to go back and look, to report back to you, any cost savings measures that we have done. And rather than going back to clear 2007 to everything that we've done, I went back to the last fee increase, which was 2018, and anything that we've implemented since that time. So the only thing I did go all the way back for was the CNG, when we transitioned from diesel to CNG for financial stewardship and environmental stewardship. Understanding totally that at first it was like, wow, this is gonna save us a lot of money, and then as time has gone on, we knew that at some point things could shift. If you wouldn't mind jumping forward, Renee, just scroll down just a little bit, to the CNG itself, and then we can jump back to those operational ones. But in 2012, we started shifting, and we didn't convert any trucks over to CNG from diesel because that was more costly. But what we started doing was replacing old diesel trucks with CNG when they were due for replacement. So over on that right column, the two columns, you'll see the total side load trucks, and that is the majority of our fleet, our heavy duty fleet. We do have 2 front load trucks that are considered heavy duty as well. So you can see as over time, we started switching those out, or excuse me, replacing those. And by 2018, we had a full CNG fleet. And then Matt Ferguson, our controller and treasurer, put together this analysis that Craig had started when he was here. And when he retired, Matt's been picking up and keeping on with tracking this information. The first little part up there, I'm sorry, Renee, you were doing just fine, right? That So we do get a tax credit back for purchasing CNG fuel. And so over the years, we have recouped, $470,000. I'm sorry, I forgot to move my decimal. But it is just over $470,000, of tax credit that has come back, that of course goes right into our operations. And then scrolling down, looking at the purchasing of that fuel, and where we save is the price difference between a gallon of diesel versus a gallon CNG, or excuse me, a diesel equivalent gallon of CNG fuel. And so, you can see over the years, we've saved $4.1 million based on, that, sorry, not 4 years, but over the years of implementing this, we've saved, over $4 million, for the price of fuel. What we've experienced lately is trying to sell those CNG trucks. Everybody has the infrastructure in place that they can actually buy CNG trucks. However, I will say that this year we were able to sell two that were up for replacement, and we're out to auction for $60K each. The purchase price is double that, it's $320K. And there is a price difference to purchase a CNG truck versus a diesel. But depending on that fuel price, we could capture that additional cost, and it basically will pay for that additional cost within 2 to 3 years, depending on the price. So that's CNG there itself. The projected savings based on what, our vendor has told us, and that Salt Lake County is where we buy our fuel. And we purchase, over 500,000 gallons of fuel every year. And so the price difference going into 2023, we're estimating over $1 million saved, because diesel is basically projected to be $4 a gallon and CNG too. So that's, I can even figure that one out. Paul didn't have to double check my math. So if you'll scroll on back up, I'll get into some of the efficiencies. Starting in 2018, go ahead and go up to the first page. Thank you, Renee. Most recently, we have been implementing technology to try to help us to become more efficient and capture what's happening out there so we can make some adjustments. I wouldn't say we're in the 21st century, but maybe we're in the 20th century. Looking at using technology, there's always the return on investment, because you have to pay for it, and then what do we get back? So Renee was instrumental in helping to put together this case, basically to say this is why we need to purchase the iPads or tablets for our supervisors, managers, and leads to use. And then this is the projected savings going forward. So the purchase price for those 17 iPads and tablets was $16,844. And what we are looking for ongoing cost is $680 going annually, and that's for the data usage of those each month. The projected savings for 2023 is just over $23,000. The target, or the low-hanging fruit we're trying to get, is those go-backs, so missed pickups. So if a driver happens to miss a can, that we can easily find the closest driver to that situation and dispatch that driver immediately. So we're, as you can imagine, just saying the words "go back," that equals dollars and cents going up. So we're just trying to reduce the number of those and capture those. So the estimate is based off of 2,700 misses each year is the historical data. And if we can just reduce that by even, let's say half, we're going to save a lot of money. That's the idea there. 2020, we installed dash cameras, and this particular example I have is actually a case that occurred this year. For the purchase price, we didn't actually have to buy the units, but we do pay for the data on a monthly cost. The annual cost is $40,000. The return on
Well, you have to buy the cameras. The annual cost is $40,000.
Yeah, exactly. So the dash cameras have saved us on claims, so false claims by residents. The particular example I have up here is an extreme example, meaning that it's one example that happened this year that it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars that our insurance company would have had to pay out. We had a unfortunate quite a severe accident with one of our trucks going along, Mountain View, and he was traveling 52 miles an hour, green light. Our driver had a green light, and a pickup truck ran their red light and hit our driver's side. It's a front load truck, so it hit the driver's side of that truck. Injuries by both parties. The pickup truck was totaled. Our truck is still being determined if it will be totaled. It is, one of our older, side load trucks. But at any rate, the dash camera showed clearly we were in the right, even though the driver claimed that we were wrong. So that saved hundreds of thousands of litigation costs, attorney's fees, et cetera. So even though we wouldn't pay that directly, we would have to pay it in the long run with our premiums going up. So that's one example there. GPS is installed on the trucks. You can see that annual cost there. But for every mile that we can save, it's about $11.50, including fuel and maintenance and labor. Going down, again, we're looking at something that we did recently, starting in 2019, is diversifying where we take our garbage, the MSW, municipal solid waste. In 2019, the landfill, Salt Lake Valley landfill, started their tiered pricing, which basically gives you a price break, depending on how much tonnage you take to them. And their incentive to do that was because it's cheaper for them to have waste go directly to the landfill versus their transfer station, where it costs them about $10 a ton to take it to the landfill. So they put incentives in place for their customers, including us, that we get a price break. And so we pay about $27 a ton to take waste. As long as we hit 20,001 ton, every year we get that price break of $27 versus the $33 when we first implemented this. This year it's $34 at the transfer station. So you can see there's automatic savings there over $100,000. This year we're projected to be $143,000, and then in 2023, with the transfer station raising their fee $1, we're projecting about $160,000 save there. The other thing we did is, in 2019, we started negotiating with Salt Lake County to reduce our tonnage commitment, or at least shift it from a percentage to an actual tonnage amount that we can manage. And then also diversify taking garbage from Taylorsville City over to ACE's transfer station for price and proximity. So you may have heard me use those words before, but we look at anywhere we're going to take recycling, green, or garbage by price, what they're going to charge us, and the proximity of our routes. So in doing that with ACE, we had some savings there with their $31 versus $34. It's not a huge savings, but then there's also miles. And we track that closely. So if ever it looks like that's not going to be cost effective, we will take the waste to the transfer station. Getting into the green waste, starting in 2018, we started taking bulky green over to Diamond Tree, which is off 500 West and 3300 South. And what happens there is it's $25 a load versus $17 a ton. And I think the biggest savings, you won't see huge savings there, it's about $9,000 to $10,000 a year. But where we do have savings, and I apologize, I was last minute getting this data, but over the years of implementing that, there's a grand total of $105,000 savings by the miles being traveled. And that's a year over year, just understanding that. Recycling, we have 2 vendors that we take the recycling to. Again, it's based on price and proximity, so we will adjust as we need to. We take the waste management, which is over in Salt Lake City, and then we also, the lion's share goes to Rocky Mountain Recycling Services. Depending on their price that they charge us, we will divide up that tonnage. I could go on and on, but I want to make sure that I do say how we have saved dollars and cents. And I'm skipping number 2, started utilizing on-site transfer station. That was for scrap, area cleanup and then scrap. What that means is that we're trying to save loads going to and from the landfill and having an on-site, what we call an on-site transfer station, with a rear loader parked in the park, and then the containers will go to that rear loader and dump the container versus going all the way out to the landfill or the transfer station. So there's miles saved there.
So the rear loader has the capability of lifting the container up and emptying it?
It doesn't actually lift it. We use the hook lift truck to raise the back, the bed, and then dump it into the.
There's a way to put it in from the big container
Yeah.
in the back.
You got it. So it's one big load going to the landfill or transfer station versus the 10, hook lift. So roughly about $86,000 saved there.
And I needed to understand that for what I'm gonna annoy you with later,
Yeah.
maybe after the meeting.
Thank you. So that's the savings piece. I do have some information about scrap, but I certainly can review that when we get into the, budget if you like. 'Cause I know we're short on time and I wanna make sure we are able to present our proposed budget and you can give us direction. So if it's okay, I can skip that and deal with it when we get to the budget.
Okay, then we'll move to 3.4, 2023 proposed budget and fee schedule.
All right. Paul, I'll kick it off and then I'm gonna turn it over to you since you have this work of art going. If you'll scroll on down to this first page, this is the proposed budget introduction. The priorities that we came into this budget with is trying to manage the increased costs that we've been experiencing over the years, and then looking at 2023 cost increases as well. I think we can understand that because of labor costs going up, trying to retain those that have the skill that we need. The maintenance has gone up, fuel, et cetera. We have been walking through those cost increases with you as a board. That looks like what Paul's work of art showed was a $2.1 million increase, and that doesn't include 2023. So when I put together the, bullet points and the why we need to do this, we'll have 2023 included, to illustrate why we need to raise rates. And we go out to talk to each of you as council and mayor to justify what we're doing. So, you as a board have discussed the $2.50 per home per month increase, which will take us from $17 a month to $19.50. And what that equates to quarterly would be 50, I believe it is, and then 234 from the 204. So that is something that we're looking to help, offset the cost increase, or at least keep up. And we're proposing to raise the town of Brighton and Big Hotwood $1.25 per month, from the $14.75 up to $16. There is a seasonal resident, that would be moved from $8.50 to $9.75 because they pay half of the rate that we charge the valley residents. We want to continue on with the services that we provide that our residents love. We want to find ways to expand the seasonal, container reservation program, if at all possible, with the limited resources we have available. So you can see the list of our services that we provide. You're very familiar with those. We have a discounted trailer rental rate for our residents. That is offset by the monthly fee, and roughly about $5.64 annually, depending on the number of rentals. And that was a cost analysis that Matt put together for me just last week. Thank you, Matt. Also, in looking at scrap, there's a possibility that I discussed with you of having a small fee attached to that to be similar to how we run the trailer rental. And I know that was, discussed and debated and not part of what you wanted to do going forward, and I totally respect that. There's a thought that maybe you might reconsider that, which is fine if you don't. It won't hurt my feelings, but I thought I would bring it up again. But the dollar amount that we subsidize as residents is about $1.25 per month, for that particular service, the scrap. And just so you know, in 2023, what we feel like we can do is provide 60 to 65 containers a day. Now, that might sound like a lot. Well, that's a lot. Well, it's it's actually a reduction in what we have been doing, and the method to my madness is to try to keep safe. Just to give you historical information, when we were dropping those containers in the street, we had a lot of staff to do so, up to 22 to 24 CDL drivers. We were doing 124 containers every day, picking up, dropping off. Over time, we found with staffing, we really needed to change that program. As you know, we did so, starting in 2020 with rolling out this reservation system. And it is something we looked at as staff back in 2018, and it was not received very well. I don't know, board member Bracken might remember the discussion, but it was basically no.
The change is not popular.
Yeah. So we carried on as best we could in 2019, experienced severe staffing issues. So going into 2020, thought of short staff, pandemic, that's when the board gave permission for us to roll this out. And then I think you've come to the harsh reality that we can't go back, because of staffing. And part-time labor, is really hard to come by. This year, we've had to pull an average of 6 full-time drivers over every single day to help with scrap, because we've averaged 4 part-time CDL drivers when we need 18 drivers, so we've had 11. So, I've noticed in evaluating what's happening out there, we're very customer service oriented, which I love. However, we don't want to sacrifice safety to deliver those containers. And so I've asked staff to lock it down on the trailer reservation system, which is a beautiful work of art that Gail Johnson and Renee Plant put together on our new website to basically say 60 a day, depending on staffing, maybe we can get it to 65. But I want to make sure we're following all.
That is with full-time employees only?
We're requesting to add 3 full-time drivers to help with our pool of drivers to pull from, that pool to help with scrap. We still need those part-timers, right? So we're still gonna need some part-time drivers, and we're hoping with the increased wages, associated with the part-time staff as well, that we can recruit some of those. We are able to get at least 4. We do have people that return to us, that they're retired, it's something they'd love to do every year. Where it does fluctuate is during school season. We have school buses that want to come and join us once the school year stops, but then they leave us once they drive the bus. I believe that was board member Stitzer that had to jump off.
I'm still here.
Still there, great. And then I want to note that Tom Disserat is here. Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Thank you. So anyway, long and short of it, that's the method of why we need to kind of keep that under control. And I know it may not be received very well. And then going back and talking about a fee, should we really attach a fee if we're going to have to reduce what we've already been doing? So I understand we may not do that. So if you'll scroll down a little bit, I want to just highlight a little bit about the personnel budget. It does include those salary market adjustments that Melissa talked about, try to keep us competitive. And I also want to include a 2% merit increase, because that does hit on the employee's anniversary date, to try to keep people moving within their range. And she talked about the lump sum for those folks that are topped out at their salary range, that they would get it when they meet expectations on an annual basis. Health insurance, we have heard from our provider, PEHP, that we're going to go up 5% in both health and dental. We want to continue on with our great benefit package of the shared premium, 80-20 split. And then we want to add more benefits that have been available this year. Most health insurance providers have implemented more options for emotional and mental well-being for employers to offer employees. I think it's really important to do that. The low deductibles, and then Ashley, I don't know if you run through some about the high deductible plan.
Regarding
The premiums and, yeah, you would.
Yeah, course. So the high deductible plan is the non-embedded plan, which means that, you have to pay, each family has to pay to meet that deductible versus the traditional plan, they all pay into that deductible, so it's a pool. So everybody has to, in the family has to hit that 2,000, and then on the family for the traditional, it's just the 1,000 for the pool. Does that make sense? So everybody has to hit a 2,000 in the family for the non-embedded, and then for the traditional 1,000, it's all just in the pool.
Okay, thank you. And then looking at the URS, the rates went down slightly in 2023, and Paul, we're thinking that's probably not gonna last.
Yeah, I was surprised at that, so, and I think they look at it historically and go back a couple of years, I'm guessing, because currently you'd think the rates would go up with how the rates of return in the market.
Yeah.
That's what they did, so we plugged it in.
Okay, scrolling on down, operational highlights. Customer service, as I've mentioned, the website many a time, and we are beefing up the education for recycling because we want to continue to keep it clean, get it cleaner, to help our rates to, what we might have to pay out there to our vendors, keep that low as possible. Risk management, loss prevention, we do want to add that safety and emergency coordinator position. We really feel like if we can get more investment going into education, training, and preventative measures, getting to the root cause of an accident and incident, we can do more prevention. Trainings, again, for personal safety, reduce injuries, hopefully lower our workers' comp premiums. I think I mentioned that it did go up 61% from 2021 to 2022. Want to get that back down if possible. We want to try to manage the increased costs from our partners at the landfills. They're raising their tonnage per ton amount to us. Again, implementing the technologies to help us to be more efficient out there. For sustainability, we want to dedicate resources for recycling education and monitor the commodity markets. And then one of the things we're looking at is expanding the number of central glass collection sites. And there's a new way that momentum has come about to try to reduce the footprint of those big glass containers that are 14 yards. They have what they call a pod. So it's 4 90-gallon or 60-gallon cart cans that are on a pod, and you can put them in a parking lot. So we're going to test it out. There's a location in Mill Creek, West Mill Creek, that we can try this out. And if it works and it's successful, we're looking at trying to find a space in Holiday City and try to bring back the glass site there, because we had to reduce that.
I know the neighbors that are way up on the hill really like the rolling glass down the middle.
Yes.
Easier to get there.
So we're working on it, trying to improve and continue on with diversion. Scrolling on down to the work of art that Paul put together, while he takes over, I'm grab me some more water.
So, as far as these numbers, these are the summary level numbers. The first column, this is the preliminary budget, and so there will be some changes, I think. But the first column is the actual numbers from 2021, and those were audited. Those were our final numbers. You can see the revenues less expenses, about $210,000. And then we have our adopted budget for this year, in those different categories of expenses and also revenue charges for services and non-operating revenues. The third column over is the estimated current year for 2022, and what I do is I look at July numbers on this and project them out, and then I look at certain categories and don't, I look at the category too. For example, if we've already paid rent, we don't want to project out that for 5 more months. I mean, that's a one-time charge for the year. And so I'll look at those categories and adjust accordingly. But that's what we're projecting for 2022. And then to the far right column, that preliminary budget for 2023 is the numbers we put together so far for the coming year. A couple things, we can go down on some of these major changes. The charges for services, I did put in the $2.50 per per month increase there. And so that bumped that up significantly from, the budget last year and also from what we're looking at our estimate this year. And then also non-operating revenues, they decreased some in 2022, and we expect them to be pretty consistent in 2023. And so, those are the revenues going down. Personnel expenses, 10,786, and that does include, wages, overtime benefits, work comp, pension, temporary employees, and it's for all positions. It's not just for, a position that was filled at a certain point in the year. It's for all positions when we do that. Fuel, we met.
That's a, am I doing my, I mean, you're like 15 to 17% increase, is that?
Over last year, over this
Yeah.
current year.
Yes.
Year over year, it's 1.7 million up.
Yeah.
But we eat a lot out of the 215.
Yes, it does.
And that's the estimated year end, right? So versus the budgeted, be a 1.1.
Next category, fuel. Both fuel and maintenance, we met with fleet and kind of got their fill on this, their idea. Fuel, I adjusted it, increased it 5%, looking a lot at CNG, and that's where I got that number from. Diesel, I'm really hoping it doesn't go higher in 2023, but I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Maintenance, I increased that 8%, and that was really based upon our discussions with fleet and what they were telling us what they see coming in the next year. They're still having difficulty getting parts and for maintenance and those type of things. There's still a backlog. They don't feel like it's very smooth as far as ordering parts and the timing when they get them in. So they said 8% they thought was a good projection on that. The Salt Lake County disposal fees in Transjordan, I went in and did an estimated tons, and I also took into account the increase at Transjordan and the increase at the transfer station there. On the recycling fees, we estimated, or I should say budgeted $35 a ton, and that's, always questionable. We were low, and now they're coming back up as far as the recycling fees. I mean, we've seen a pretty sharp increase the last month or two.
Or they're up to 35?
Well, that's what we've got budgeted going forward, but, this year, there was a time where it had an average, I think, the first 6 months of just over $12 a ton. Normally this time of year, we do start to see a price increase, but the price increase is a little higher than it has been for a little while, so we're keeping a close eye on that.
Where was it this month then?
In September, I believe, for one vendor, right? Okay. I haven't got Rocky yet. So, yeah, the one, I'm gonna say vendor A is predicting $60 a ton. $60 a ton.
Any idea why?
Commodity markets are taking a hit, and then they're also. What's that?
It's nuts.
It is nuts. And they also implemented a, contamination fee starting in July.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I mentioned is that we will adjust, where we take our recycling or our garbage based on price and proximity. So, we've already let the vendors know we're adjusting 8 routes from Taylorsville, not going to vendor A, now they're gonna go to vendor B for a lower price, and proximity, so just an FYI. Yeah. Yeah, we try to keep up, and again, that's the benefit of getting the data and information quickly so we can make those adjustments. And we can still stay within our contracted commitments, because we do make commitments to both vendors, so.
Anyway, for the year, next year, right now, we have $35. We wait a month or two, and we'll see on that. So, it's always really hard because that's just so volatile. On cans and container purchases, This is an interesting one. In 2021, we paid just under $50 for a can, just a normal can. This year, we paid about $62 a can, and we're budgeting $74 a can for 2023. So, those are the numbers we got from the vendor, with input from the vendor. We've just seen that increase gone from $50 to $74 in 2 years. Yeah, it is. And I always ask, and I've said this before, how long can this keep going? You know, you'll see whether it's wages or buying cans or maintenance or how long can it keep going? Because I keep on thinking it's eventually got to give and something has to break here. But so far, we keep rolling along with high inflation. So, as far as the next categories, county, IT, phone services, that's what we pay Salt Lake County for those services. County rent, we still pay that, but it's classified different. And a piece of it's in depreciation expense, and then a piece of it is in interest expense. And so we're still paying the county rent, but there was an accounting change that we talked about previously, just the way those expenses are classified. Going down through here, the truck lease, a significant reduction there, but we have leased 16 trucks from the county for the scrap program, and we're reducing that to 10 for next year. And so that's why there's that reduction in the truck lease number. And then going down, we see the other categories, insurance, other, really includes a lot of different categories. And then depreciation expense, when I do that, I actually project out how many trucks we're purchasing, how many trucks we're selling, and calculate that based upon each asset. And then interest expense there is what relates to the leases. And so when we look at that, total expenses right around $26.5 million that we're budgeting for next year, which is a fairly significant increase, but like we talked about, things are still really increasing for us as far as our costs. Then we'll talk about capital expenditures here in just a minute, the $3.3 million at the bottom.
Paul, I just had one question. The proposed fee increase, is that included in the charges that for services?
Yes.
Okay. And how much and when will that fee increase go into effect?
January 1.
Oh, so it'd be January, so it'll be effective, so it wouldn't affect 2022.
No, and then understanding we have that delay because we bill in arrears. It's a 3-month delay.
So it goes in effect January 1. Our cash would actually feel a benefit in April, May, because we bill for the past quarter. Any other questions on that? And then the next one is the cash projections. And just looking at this, this is based on the preliminary budget, and we've seen this before. What's highlighted in kind of the blue there are the actual numbers for the last 3 years, and that kind of gives us history. We can see how our ending cash and investment balance, that third line from the bottom is kind of the main one here that where the numbers are adding up to, and we can see a decrease in the cash and investment balance. When we look at this, I did the estimated 2022, and then I put the preliminary budget in for 2023 to see the projections and really where we think we'll be with cash. I think it will decrease. I thought that, but after our pre-board meeting, our asset manager got a call from Peterbilt, and it doesn't look like we're going to get the side-load trucks we ordered this year, which we were kind of hesitant about. And I have those in here, and so if we don't get those 8 trucks or pay for them this year, that's going to really increase our cash balances. So what I put here needs to be adjusted, and when our asset manager gets back in town, Pam and I will meet with him, and we'll get a plan of attack. And we'd like to have those trucks, but last year in May, we had paid Peterbilt for the 8 trucks. This year, it's almost in September, and we haven't paid them, and he said it's looking pretty doubtful we're going to get them this year. And so with that, it will increase our cash, but I think that's, I don't want to say it's a false increase, but I don't like saying, wow, we got a lot of cash just because we didn't get the trucks we wanted to order. And so I would still strongly encourage the fee increase and to think that way, and then we'll see what happens with these trucks.
It's already allocated money.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's just pulled over.
And we want to get them and we need them, but, we'll see what happens. I got a feeling they're gonna come back and defer them and then say, well, the costs have gone up.
Yeah.
So I think.
That's $2.5 million, the trucks, or is it?
Yeah, we have that on another page. Well, it's for next year, but, yeah, it's $2.5 to $3 million for those 8 trucks. And so, anyway, we looked at this, cash was decreasing, and like I said, with that, you know, if it's $2.5, $3 million, it's gonna make our cash look much higher than I projected the last several projections. But based on the information we have.
Didn't buy any trucks this year, not our fault. I mean,
Out of our control. Yeah, it's tricky.
So when I look at this, you know, if we would have bought the trucks, I think cash would be decreasing. It's hard to say. I think out 1 year, I think we can get pretty good sometimes when we gotta have these truck purchases. Even that's really gonna fluctuate. You go out 3 or 4 years, and I've said before, I think we just need to remain flexible. Because what's gonna happen? And none of us know for sure, and the economists don't know. But, you know, we wanna plan and I think be conservative as far as our cash amount too. So, the next slide is,
Does the ending cash investment include the accounts receivables?
pardon?
The ending cash and investment balance, does that include the accounts receivables?
It includes cash collected,
But not any receivables?
Not necessarily receivables, no, because we're trying to go on a cash basis here. What cash was collected, what cash was spent. And then the next one is the pie chart. This kind of just shows and really depicts what are our main categories here. We look and see personnel, a significant amount. Back on the prior page, it was about 41%, and this graph really shows that personnel. And then maintenance, really disposal fees is the next one if you add in Salt Lake County and any other providers of that. Disposal fees is the second largest expense we have, and then maintenance. And then you can see depreciation and fuel, but just gives you kind of a depiction, and I think from our discussions today, we know personnel, you know, a big piece of what we do is very important. Any questions on that? Okay, we can move on to the next one. And this was our projections for next year. I think, you know, after our discussion, we may need to bump up that 8 side load amount. And then we'll also carry over 8 side loads from this year onto here also. And so this was the amount we looked at like a few weeks ago, but it will change now. We have looked at the 3 light duty trucks. Those are like F-350s, Ford F-350s that we use are that size of truck. And then we looked at and we wanted to budget for, there's a used hook lift truck that it's not public works, flood control has, that we're going to look at and see what condition that is and possibly purchase that. Because one thing we thought about with scrap is trying to expand that time frame we do scrap and would allow us to have more containers. But then we're really dependent upon public works and their trucks and when they're available. And they've told us they're available for the time we have, and we can expand it out to 7+ months. On there, we looked at that and wanted to do that. And so right now we own 3 hook lift trucks, and this would give us a 4th if we decide to purchase it. We put it in here, we really want to have it looked at before we make that decision.
Make sure it's what the one,
Yeah.
but it is newer than our 3 as far as years and hours used, so I thought it might be a good deal rather than purchasing a new one at 160 roughly.
Probably can't get it anyway.
Yeah, we can't get it, right?
Yeah.
Right, you got it.
I do like your skin on the.
Doesn't that,
Yeah,
that's nice,
that was very good.
nice truck wrap right there. Did a lot of recycling campaign truck wraps. Education. So moving into the fee, this is a summary of what we've been talking about, what we're looking at, to break down the total fee for residents to have their waste and recycling hauled off once a week is just under $5 per week. which really, if you think about it, including leaves, Christmas tree, the scrap program, it really is a screaming deal. We try to keep it as, customer friendly as possible. And then let's not forget about landfill vouchers. I don't want to forget about that. And then.
That's still a positive, the scrap program is.
Yeah, I know, that's, anyway. Moving into the, increased startup fee for subscription services. Green waste, we need to bump that can purchase from $60 to $70, and then the glass goes up $10 as well to try to pay for that can, the purchase price of that can. So those are for the subscription services specifically. Trailer rental, we're proposing an increase for the bulk from $175 to $190. For the green, we're looking at moving that from $45 to $55, and that's per rental. We need to also adjust our fee that we charge in the trailer rental for tires, because the landfill did bump up their fee from $3 to $4, so we're just going to match that, so we can make sure we pay for it with the resident that might dispose of tires in the trailer. Increased fees for glass collections. We have not increased this fee since 2015, and obviously our salaries have gone up. We have been charging them about a $25, excuse me, let me just back up a little bit, I get going too fast. So we've been charging residents $8 a month. We pay for the service to our vendor that provides that $7.75, and we've been keeping 25 cents per subscription for the billing portion and for managing that. Really looking at digging in our customer service salaries need to be increased or included in that, which would increase that cost. Momentum has projected they're going to raise our fees going into 2023. I've not got that dollar amount, but just to cover our administrative, we need to bump it up 50 cents per month. We have a proposed fee there for scrap, and I totally recognize that that may not be part of your direction today, but it's proposed $50 to offset the cost. Second can startup fee, this is something that we missed, and I want to make sure that we capture. When a resident calls up and they want an additional garbage can or recycle can, we've not been charging them for the price of getting that can. So this is something that we want to implement. It's a one-time charge, and then there'll be the additional collection fee for that. Speaking of which, for the, we'll get more into that before I get going. The front load special events and so forth, we're bumping those up for $5 per size. If we scroll down, I can get more into the detail and go through that. You can see where we're at on those that I just talked about. The second can startup fee, $70. If you bump back up to the curbside service for the recycling can, it used to be for an additional can, it was $3 per month for a second recycling can to go pick that up. We're requesting to bump that up to $5. And then for the second flat can, it would move to $19.50 from $17. And then I think those are the main ones I got. The new home startup fee would move from $130 for startup for new home to $140 again to pay for the cans. And then we would, for the refurbished can, we bump that up just $5 from 35 to 40. That's an old can that we rinse out, and the resident can choose that older can versus a brand new one at a lower price.
If someone gets a second can and they use it for a while and discontinue, I guess you pick up the second can. They don't get any kind of credit for that, do they, when you...
We wouldn't do that. That's not proposed. The main reason is that it could cause an administrative nightmare.
Yeah.
We've been trying to track down just how many people reserve a can and just want it for a week. And if they want it for a week and they don't want to pay that full $70, we can deliver a refurb can, but they still need to pay for the can plus the pickup, because we really need to make sure we're recouping our costs. Right. It does cost money to go out for the customer service to take the order, for our container specialists to deliver the can, and then of course the curbside service on top of that. Good question.
Should just take out and deliver more landfill vouchers.
Yeah, exactly. So the thought there is that if we're gonna charge them an upfront cost, that maybe they'll rethink and use the landfill voucher, which might be a little more cost effective for
For
everybody.
reserve training.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then, depending on your direction, the seasonal container reservations, I wanna make sure that doesn't fall off the radar when you do give your direction. You can say no to that, that's fine. Scrolling on down, I mentioned the front load services, and we did bump everything up by $5. I have notified all of our partners with Salt Lake County. We pick up for all their facilities. And so they are aware that their fees are gonna go up starting January 1. We'll start reaching out to each municipality where we pick up at City Hall, to let you know any price increase for your respective, services. Any questions, comments?
No, I'll start off with the scrap program though, because, we did talk about this in pre-board meeting, and then the more I thought about it, it's giving me some heartburn. Simply because if I think about it from a municipality perspective or a resident perspective, we get, I don't know about you guys, but I get pushback about how come our rates are higher than this or things like that. And we've been able to show the services that we provide, and we provide an elite service. We provide a lot of extra things for our clients as part of that cost. And I think we do a great job in that and trying to keep it within the cost. And I understand the purpose for proposing the $50, but right now, this same year, we're gonna go for a rate increase of $2.50. Very justifiable, very easy to demonstrate why we need to do that. But then in addition, if you say plus one of the benefits, we're now gonna start charging you for it, then it starts to look like, what, okay, so you're charging me more per can, and now you're charging me for one of the benefits that you're saying are kind of included in that. It just seems like maybe bad timing, to ask for both the rate increase and the charge for the scrap program. Those are just some of my, and I don't typically, I don't make decisions based off of the perception, per se. They have to make sense to me, but that one is a tough sell to me, to pay the extra $50 right now. I need to see some real hard numbers that's showing this is how we're gonna justify it. Right now, we're subsidizing it. We've known forever we're subsidizing scrap program. It's part of your
Part of the monthly fee.
$700 fee, right? And I understand that not everybody's getting the benefit, and we're scaling back people who are getting the benefit of it, keeping the subsidy, but then charging $50. That's the perception I would have if I'm a resident, and I am a resident.
What is the cost of the program?
Well, we've,
All by
now,
itself, it's like
sorry,
$1.5 million?
and 1.2 is projected for, 2023, 1.2, a little bit over maybe.
So that's $1.20
Yes.
on your monthly fee.
$15 a year, I think is what
And some people feel certainly that that's already been eliminated, that they didn't get the
Benefit of it.
the reduction in fee. I mean, because what you're saying, I understand, you can explain it other ways as well, but,
I get it.
so, yeah, that one's tough.
Yeah, the difficulty I find is I think everyone needs to have the service that they're paying for it, or else the people who get the service ought to pay for the service. And the other thing on my street, I saw, on my block, we ended up with 6 or 8 containers, and I think most of those containers came back only partially filled, because somebody ordered one because they had some carpet they'd taken out, and they put the carpet in, and someone else ordered one because they had a water heater to get rid of. And I think a good share of those went back only partially filled.
So then to me, it's like, then do we reevaluate the scrap program? We're reevaluating it constantly, don't get me wrong. But do we, rather than implement the fee increase, do we do it as an overall evaluation of the scrap program and demonstrate how much being subsidized, this is the percentage of people who are getting the benefit of it. Do we rework the whole thing? I don't know. Those are just some of the thoughts tumbling in my head, so I'll let the board decide what you think.
This is Anna with Taylorsville. Now that we are going to have a new data entry person, I would like to see a little more data about the scrap program. I know in Taylorsville, we have the big cleanup in spring, and then we had people order their containers, but a lot of containers went empty. I'm really curious, did we get less tonnage? Because we had the scrap cleanup, or excuse me, not scrap cleanup, we just had cleanup overall in the city. And with the new way of ordering the scrap, and then with COVID, I would love to see some data of another year or two of how we're doing this program and how it's being done now and implemented. And maybe we can become more effective with just the way we're doing it right now. If we can't, then we go to a paid per feed, pay to play, or we scrap the scrap, I don't know. But I think we need more data.
Not a problem.
My thought, Dan Gibbons from Holiday, my thought would be that we, I would be supportive of approving this preliminary budget with removing, as our chair has recommended, or as her personal opinion, removing the extra fee for the scrap. And I love the idea of of getting some more data. I have also wondered if we consider going back to the old system, but not on an annual basis, but on a rolling, maybe semi-annual basis. So in other words, every 2 years, you're going to have the traditional dropping off of dumpsters on the street, but it's going to be in different municipalities or different areas of the city every year or something like that. But that's a discussion for another day, and I think getting data would be wonderful to guide our direction on that.
Does anyone else have comments or questions online? In the room? Okay.
Yeah, actually, can I? Sorry.
Yeah.
This is Laurie. Hey, I just wanted to say, today's meeting, your analysis for all of the jobs, the salary increases and all of that is some of the best analysis I've seen. So kudos to those who worked hard on that and to the staff for putting all of this together. I'm a numbers girl, and I get a little giddy when I see some really good numbers. So thank you to everybody who put all of that together today. And it was consistent throughout the whole of today. So I just wanted to say that before we signed off, since I had a hard time with my sound for a little while there, so I apologize.
Thanks, Board Member Stream. Okay, we need some direction for this. I assume you need a motion to approve the proposed budget.
I'll make the motion, unless there's something else that go ahead.
Yeah, we'll have some changes, so you just give us direction today.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
the tentative adoption will be.
All right,
We'll take out.
in other words, you're going to
Yeah,
revise
The
it.
trucks,
Yeah.
well, the trucks now purchasing, so we won't have depreciation for them, and then we gotta get a projection, when are we gonna
Yeah.
purchase them and what's the cost? And so those numbers will change.
we know their price is gonna go up, even for the ones we have this year.
Good. What, my motion then will be that we give direction, to move forward with the preliminary budget with the, amendments or the changes that you're gonna be putting in the next draft. In other words, we're not approving the preliminary budget, we're just giving you direction to move forward. So that'll be my motion.
Perfect.
Because your tentative budget needs to be posted after October for November discussion,
And the public hearing.
the public hearing.
Correct.
So we have a couple weeks.
Okay,
Hoping to
so
get an answer.
we have a motion by Dan. Can I get a second?
I'll second. With Anna with Taylorsville, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
With those changes and those scrap fee.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, perfect. Do you have a need for a closed session?
No, we do not.
Okay, is there any other board members who'd like to share anything at this time? Good job. Okay, so next board meeting is on October 24th, 9 a.m., 2022 third quarter financial report, tentative adoption of the tentative budget, and confirm the date and time for the public hearing, and the general manager's report. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime.